So, good morning, everyone. We are about to start this Cartel Working Group Plenary. The topic for today is opportunities and challenges in the fight against cartels. This session will focus on the use of proactive detection tools to detect cartels and how technology is being used to both assist in detection and the investigation of cartels. It will also consider the challenges presented by new types of infringement, such as price signaling, and new technologies such as algorithms, artificial intelligence, blockchain, and so on. For today, we have a set of distinguished panelists from all around the world, and as we have just 1 hour, I will just welcome you to the session today in this beautiful city, in the Edinburgh, and I will take no longer and introduce our panelists to make their initial remarks. So I will start with Mr. Derek Johnston. He is a commissioner from New Zealand. So Derek, the floor is yours.
Both a pleasure and a privilege to be here in this beautiful city of Edinburgh and to share with you a little of what we've been doing at the New Zealand Commerce Commission in relation to proactive detection of cartels. And I'd like to thank CMA for the opportunity of participating in this session. In New Zealand, we've been working on a data analysis tool for the purpose of screening of bid rigging cartels. We also have an effective whistleblowing tool. But today I would like to share with you 3 other actions that as a commission we've been undertaking more recently. The first of these is that we've been working with the financial crime team at the New Zealand Police, and we've been giving them keywords to test against their investigation database and their investigation materials to see whether there's anything from their investigations that should be referred to us for investigation as cartels. Similarly, we've been working with the New Zealand Customs Service and obtaining data from them in terms of the declared import prices of goods into New Zealand to put that with other data we've got to see whether there's indicia of cartel conduct. The second matter I wanted to mention is the fact that we've been, a key focus for us has been developing a human intelligence network. For us, one of our strongest tools for cartel detection is developing and having a strong human intelligence network and having people who will come forward and tell us about cartel activity they hear. We've been finding that takes a long time to develop. We're finding it's taken 2 to 3 years from building those initial relationships until we actually see those come to fruition and getting leads from them. And the final aspect I'd mention is that we've run a media campaign over about 3 years using short videos just highlighting cartel activity as a crime and encouraging people to report it. And we've run that successively twice a year over the last 3 years, and again that's been paying dividends for us. So thank you.
Thank you, Derek. I will now pass the floor to Mrs. Lucilia Falsarella Pereira, Senior Director of Competition Enforcement in the CMA, and to make her initial remarks.
Thank you, Diogo, and good morning, everyone. Firstly, I just want to say I'm really delighted to be part of the panel here today because I think there's so much interesting stuff happening in the fight against cartels at the moment. So talking about proactive detection, this is something the CMA has a long history on, and it's something we regard as a very important part of our toolkit. And as a result of this, for some time now, about half of our cases come from our own detection work as opposed to coming only from leniency. And I like to think about proactive detection activities as falling into 3 categories. Those that have to do with people, those that have to do with organizations, and those that have to do with data. So starting with people, similarly to New Zealand, one of the main sources of information from us are individuals who come to speak to us as informants or as whistleblowers. We have had now a successful informant rewards program for quite some time, and recently we increased the maximum amount we pay to informants to £250,000. And that reflects the fact that we consider this to be a really useful tool in our toolkit. But we don't just waiting for people to come to speak to us. We've been working to develop leads by focusing on specific sectors, and we have carried out some targeted outreach work to people involved in those sectors. Now, moving on to organizations, we've been increasingly working with organizations who may have been victims of cartels, both in the public and in the private sector, so encouraging them to come and speak to us. In the public sector, we work very closely with public procurers, helping them design procurement processes in a way that reduces the risk of collusion, and training officials to spot suspicious red flags. And we have to date reached over 80,000 public sector officials in the UK, which is now resulting in a growing number of approaches to the CMA regarding suspected bid rigging. But we are also very open to working with intelligence received from the private sector as well, so victims in the private sector, ensuring that businesses are not hampered by anti-competitive activity in their ability to grow their businesses and invest. And this is a message that we've been saying loud and clear whenever we are out speaking to the business community in the UK. And finally, turning to data, so my teams in competition enforcement, they are working very closely with data scientists and AI expert colleagues in the CMA to build intelligence and develop leads. So, for example, by using data science capability to screen for cartels using public source data. And we think that using the right tools and with access to the right data, we can increase the detection of cartels, potentially unlocking considerable productivity gains and public sector savings for the benefit of UK taxpayers. Now, all of that proactive detection work is not at all to diminish the importance of leniency, which is obviously still a critical tool in cartel enforcement and, in my view, will always be. And indeed, we see that positive effect of having a really good, effective, proactive detection program of work that has a really positive effect on leniency. So it makes it riskier for cartelists not to come forward for leniency. Last week, we launched a public consultation on our updated leniency guidance, and I would encourage everyone to have a look at it. We are aiming to make the guidance easier for firms to use by bringing it up to date with most recent developments in our policy and the way we handle leniency applications in practice. We are trying to streamline our procedures, and we also want to make sure that we have the right balance of incentives for companies and for individuals to be the first to apply for leniency. And we're really looking forward to receiving responses from stakeholders and moving forward with the guidance. So, yeah, it's quite a lot going on.
Wonderful, Lucilia. It's wonderful to hear from both of you that cartel enforcement is still alive. So, Andreas, you can rest quietly at the night. We're still doing our jobs. So, let's turn to Mr. Nuno Cunha Rodrigues, Presidente da Autoridade de Concorrência de Portugal.
Thank you, Diogo. I'd like to start by thanking Sarah Cardell and the CMA team for organizing this wonderful event. Even the weather is wonderful, which is amazing for Edinburgh standards. I think this is the city where sun is always present here. So, regarding cartels, I would like to highlight that the fight against cartels remains for the Portuguese priority. Competition authority has a priority. So, in a time when changing and enforcement is being challenged by technological evolution, the detection of collusive practices is no exception. So the truth is that we cannot expect cartels, which are the most harmful infringement to competition law, to be unchanged and locked in old-fashioned formats. This technology-led transformation paved the way to a major paradigm shift. So as a result, advanced forensic tools and specialized expertises are needed nowadays more than ever. So at the Portuguese authority, we are committed also to IT, and we've been strengthening our team with data scientists and IT specialists, and have been providing some IT training across various areas. So we have been able to recruit an expert from the criminal police, and we've been carrying out some down raids with the help of the criminal police also, sharing knowledge and carrying on those down raids. Moreover, the Portuguese authority has created a multidisciplinary digital task force that has been developing new tools to collect information, detect potential anti-competitive practices, and support investigation carried out by the ADC. For so, we have launched 3 major tools. The first one, we call it Screen IT, and it's a screening tool to identify collusive behavior between companies in public procurement, and I'll get back to this a little bit later. The second one is Scrap IT, which is a web scraping tool to collect online data, monitoring markets, namely online prices, and spotting indicia of potential price fixing. We are also seeking to improve the accuracy of the tools by training AI models based on the data obtained. And last but not least, we have a third tool, AI tool, which seeks to detect gun jumping by identifying documents similarity. We name it Detect IT. So we've got the Scrap IT, the Screen IT, and the Detect IT. Going back to the Screen IT tool, the truth is that we know that competition authorities have long used behavioral screens to detect potential collusion in public procurement data. So we have been also pursuing this avenue by securing access to e-procurement databases, which is now foreseen in the Portuguese Public Contracts Code as a result of our advocacy efforts. And we seek to identify patterns which are consistent with collusion. This has produced important results already and has allowed the Portuguese authority to secure the necessary warrants to undertake down raids, building on data analysis of suspicious patterns alone. Thus, detecting suspicious patterns on data is not only useful in building strong evidence-based case, but it also allows us to act early and to take a proactive approach. The use of data screening is truly relevant, but so is making sure that its methods keep evolving. Indeed, the implementation of new digital screening methods powered by advanced data collection technologies holds great potential, particularly with the use of algorithms and machine learning. So at the ADC, our aim is to keep up with AI and machine learning advancements to help us further improve the detection potential of anti-competitive practices and reliability. So although the bread and butter cartels are not out of sight, collusion today is taking new forms, adapting to changing market structures and emerging technologies. So enforcement must evolve alongside this change. This is a path that requires patience, investment, and resilience. But the truth is that the game-changing improvements can be just around the corner. So this means that we might be closer than ever to transforming these sophisticated techniques in a crucial part of our detection toolbox. And I'll stop here, Diogo.
Thank you, Nuno. Let's take a trip to South America with Mr. Jorge Grunberg, Fiscal Nacional de la Fiscalía del Chile.
Thank you, Diogo. Good morning to everyone. I would like to start by saying thanks to the CMA and the Cartel Working Group for inviting us to participate in this plenary and for the opportunity to share our perspective. With regard to proactive detection, first I would like to highlight that we have a strong track record in detecting cartels and initiating ex officio investigations. Almost 60% of the cases we have brought before courts in the last 10 years stemmed from ex officio investigations. Even though we have an effective leniency program like some other small economies, we don't depend on leniency. Only half of the cartel cases we had during the last 10 years had a leniency applicant. Our success rates before courts are the same with or without leniency. We have never lost a cartel case since Congress granted us in year 2009 information gathering powers and created the leniency program. Paramount to our proactive detection strategy is the intelligence unit created in year 2020. It is a multidisciplinary team composed of a lead attorney, a data scientist, economist, and a software developer. In the following months, we expect to further strengthen the team by incorporating 2 additional professionals specializing in economics and data science. The unit has been as useful for detection as it has been to support investigations. Like some of our sister agencies abroad, but probably in an earlier stage, we have been using technology to detect cartels, including artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data, and web scraping. To support investigations, we have implemented further improvements that make the execution of information gathering powers, dawn rates, phone logs, and wiretaps more effective. Specifically, in the context of phone logs, we have developed simple coding scripts to help us visualize the data. Phone logs contain valuable information that can be used, for example, to identify targets of interest and to group already known important targets in the same place. They can also be used to identify target routines and frequent routes, which are very valuable to prepare for dawn raids. This tool has already been successfully used in ongoing cartel investigations, and we have shared it with some peer agencies. Finally, I would like to say a few words regarding our recent accusation we submitted in October of last year in the casino industry, which can be considered a landmark case in the history of our agency for the following reasons. This is a bid rigging case in which the 3 most relevant casino operators sought to maintain their licenses for another 15 years until the years 2038 or 2039. Our investigation was initiated based on a claim submitted by the Superintendency of Casinos, the entity in charge of assigning the licenses. This is a demonstration that the collaboration between a regulator and a competition agency can be fruitful in the fight against cartels. During the investigation, we successfully carried out dawn raids in the private residences of 4 executives, based on our experience gained throughout the pandemic that was built importantly on the insights shared by our partners here in the ICN. Additionally, we count with evidence handed to us by a leniency applicant. In our accusation, we requested the Competition Tribunal to impose the highest fines in the history of the Chilean competition enforcement system for a total amount of more than $150 million, including not only the companies, but also 4 individuals that were top executives of the firms involved for a total amount of more than $2.5 million. Another interesting point to be mentioned here is that for the first time ever, we requested the Competition Tribunal to impose the measure contemplated in Section 26A of the Competition Act, consisting in the termination of the anti-competitive acts, in this case, the termination of the 15-year licenses to operate casinos. In our view, this delivers a clear deterrent signal for all the infrastructure operators in Chile, such as in telecommunications, sanitary services, highways, and airports. Congress mandated that such infrastructure be assigned through a competitive process, and the FNE will ensure that this is the case. Thank you.
Thank you, Jorge. Well, that concludes the initial remarks from our panelists, and then I will try to explore and expand on some topics that you mentioned with a round of follow-up questions. I will start with Ms. Derrick. New Zealand's authority has invested heavily in cultivating human intelligence networks and public reporting to target media campaigns in high-risk sectors like construction, for example. Could you share insights into how you build successful human intelligence networks and how you design the media campaigns and how you measure their effectiveness in generating actionable leads, especially when relying on whistleblowing or sector-specific outreach?
Thank you. Yes. I'll take each of those in turn in terms of building human intelligence networks first, and then I'll come on to the media campaigns. In terms of building human intelligence networks, how we go about it is at the start of each year, we sit down and identify those particular sectors or industries that we think are most susceptible to potential cartel conduct. We then allocate one of our investigators to each of those areas to set about building relationships or links within that industry or sector to the extent we don't already have them. 3 months or so in, we then sit down and assess the links that we've got, the extent to which we think they show potential and are worth developing further. As I've said earlier, it takes time to build these links. So one of the keys is not just building the initial relationships, but actually keeping those relationships warm, keeping on developing them. So we go back to them sort of every 3 months or so, just ask how business is going, ask how the sector's going. Very low key, but just keep those relationships alive. And as I say, we've been seeing that 2 or 3 years on, those bear fruit. There are obviously a lot of rules around how you interact with potential sources. In our case, we need to be careful. We can't ask them to do anything illegal. We can get them to wear a wire and record conversations they have, but we can't ask them to do anything they weren't intending to do anything in any way. In talking to many agencies, they ask, what skills do you need to undertake this sort of activity? How do you go about it? And I guess our experience has been that when we look at the range of experience of our investigators, who can range from journalists, lawyers, business insolvency specialists, there's a range of skill sets there, all of which enable people to have skills of building relationships with people. And to the extent we're already doing outreach to businesses, it provides a platform in which we can build those relationships over time. But the key, as I said earlier, is continuing to follow up with those sources. So that deals with building the human relationships and how we're going about that. In terms of the media campaigns that I mentioned, as I said, we've been running these media campaigns for 3 years. We've run them twice each year. What we have done is a set of videos. One was focused on cartel conduct in the construction sector, and the other was cartel conduct between competing real estate agents. Those were our initial videos. The 3 lessons I think we've give you out of those experiences are, first, that we've got to keep the videos short, less than a minute, and that they have to be relatable and understandable by the audience. Secondly, they have to have a clear call to action. In the case of our videos, the final part of the video said, "Cartel conduct is a crime, report it." Very clear, very simple, but effective. And thirdly, I'd encourage you, if you're looking at a campaign like this, to make sure that the videos are reusable. It takes time and money to produce a video, so if you keep it general enough that it can be reused, as we've reused ours, that has been another secret, I think. In terms of the impact of the videos, we had 2 million views of the videos over the period of the videos. Of those 2 million views, that triggered 440,000 unique views to our reporting page and leniency page. We went back before we actually started the video campaigns. We set up random survey groups to actually assess people's knowledge of cartel conduct and whether it was a crime. And if you compare the results pre the campaign, it was a 60% awareness. After the campaigns, it was a 90% awareness of what cartel conduct was and it being a crime. And then, perhaps more importantly from our perspective, is what's the effectiveness of it in terms of triggering reporting through to our agency. We keep records of the complaints and reports to our organisation. During the period of the campaigns, there was a 240% increase in complaints regarding cartel conduct, and there was a 160% increase in action on our whistleblowing line. So we're certainly getting the reactions. I can't tell you the identity of the actual cases, but certainly several of our current cases and some other recent prosecutions have all resulted from the media campaigns, with people that we've either interviewed or the leniency applicants signalling that they'd actually seen those videos and that had been influential in them deciding to come forward to us. So, thank you.
Thank you, Derek. It's amazing to see that in times of artificial intelligence and digital everything, we still have old traditional methods that works very well to raise awareness and to create compliance in the society. So I will turn to Lucilia. The UK has recently introduced debarment rules for companies found to violate competition rules, alongside other deterrence mechanisms such as director disqualification. How does these sanctions sit alongside more traditional cartel enforcement, and how do you ensure deterrence without chilling legitimate commercial behavior from these guys?
Thanks, Diogo, for asking this question, because it's something we've been giving quite a lot of thought to the CMA. So when it comes to egregious cartel behavior, which causes serious harm to consumers, to other businesses, and ultimately to the economy, I think it's absolutely right that this type of conduct is strongly deterred. And when we talk about deterrence, I think it's important to bear in mind that we mean not only bringing cases against those that infringe competition law and stopping that conduct, but also stopping others who might be tempted to engage in anti-competitive behavior. So it's not all about punishment, but it's about general compliance. And I think what this means is that as enforcers, it's really important that we take real care to ensure that our enforcement action that we take in individual cases is really well communicated and is amplified, so as to have the effect of also stopping future behavior that is harmful. So creating a kind of a virtuous circle of enforcement and deterrence work which reinforce one another. So how does that deterrent effect come about? So traditionally we think about financial penalties on companies, but that's not the only way. And this year we saw an important new law come into force in the UK, which has serious consequences for cartelists. So in short, if a business is found guilty of cartel activity, it will be prevented from bidding for public contracts for up to 5 years, or maybe prevented. And this doesn't apply, however, to successful immunity recipients. Includes when the immunity arises from a leniency application in other jurisdictions. So we want to protect incentives to apply for leniency in the UK, but elsewhere as well. And we think this is a really welcome legal development in the UK. So it goes to increase incentives to comply with the law while maintaining incentives to apply for leniency and to protect the public purse as well, bearing in mind the real focus we have at the moment on public sector procurement. You also mentioned our director disqualification powers. So in the UK, we hold those in position of power are personally liable for the businesses that they run. And to date, the CMA has secured the disqualification of 29 directors. So people who have been involved in cartel activity or the anti-competitive conduct. So they are now prevented from holding company directorships or from being involved in the management of a company for a period of time. This is a very powerful deterrence tool, and it's one that we really think that makes individuals sit up and listen. So both debarment and director disqualification now will be key levers, and they really complement and sit alongside the more traditional tools, and in particular corporate fines. But of course, fines still very important. And in the past decade, the CMA has imposed fines of over £750 million. And just to mention two recent examples, so earlier this year we issued infringement decisions in our UK government bonds investigation. 4 of the banks involved agreed to settle the case, and they paid fines of over £100 million between them. And that case was followed then by issuing penalties of £77 million in our car recycling case, in which we worked closely with the European Commission. So these are some really impactful fines, and we feel that these tools, they complement each other really well. Now, as much as deterrence is important, and as much as we recognize that deterrence only really happens when there is a real credible risk of getting caught and of serious consequences if you do get caught, we are also acutely aware of the importance of explaining how competition law applies to businesses so that it doesn't get on the way of legitimate business behavior. And one way we do this is by putting a lot of effort in making all of our external communications as clear, as consistent, and accessible to businesses and to general public as possible. So just to mention a few examples, every time we issue an infringement decision, we invariably accompany this decision with a press release drawing out key points. But then we also frequently publish easier to access, even easier to access blogs, explaining in layperson's terms what that case means. We publish articles in trade press. We run targeted anti-cartel campaigns with scenarios, again, that are accessible and relevant to business in real life. We recently published a blog about algorithmic collusion, which can sound as a really complex and dry topic, and it is indeed really, really complex, but we try to really translate it into accessible language, explaining the risks involved, but also helping those businesses who do use pricing algorithms, helping them stay on the right side of the law. I mentioned earlier that we are consulting on our revised leniency guidance. So in addition to the leniency guidance, which is really detailed, we are also including some quick guides to businesses and to individuals to ensure that any potential applicants can, at a really quick look, understand what we know is a fairly complex regime. Another piece of work that we did is on green agreements. So we publish detailed guidance helping business understand how they can collaborate around green goals without breaking the law. So we published the guidance, and we also opened open door policy in relation to green agreements, which means that we can give companies tailored informal advice on how they can work together to boost the green economy. Our first year of operating this policy has demonstrated that there is a real appetite for this type of assurance and guidance. We have had approaches so far of about a dozen projects, all really interesting projects, and in 3 of them we've already published informal advice. Another piece of work that we did that goes towards explaining competition law is our work on competitor collaborations in pharmaceuticals. And here we worked in close collaboration with public health bodies to clarify where and how drug firms can work together on combination therapies for the treatment of serious conditions. And finally, in our plan, we have committed to provide further guidance to businesses on how they can collaborate to drive greater productivity and innovation, particularly in sectors of the UK industrial strategy. So yeah, I hope this gives some flavor of our position and how we're trying to balance those competing priorities.
Thank you, Lucilia. Just a quick follow-up question, if I may, concerning debarment and disqualification. How are the judicial reviews about that? Do you have issues with that?
So debarment, the regime has just came into force, so we don't have the practical experience of debarment yet. On disqualifications, yes, we have had some cases gone to court, but we have managed to keep individuals disqualified.
Wonderful. Now, let me turn it to Nuno. Evolving market structures have brought new challenges, including algorithmic collusion, buyer cartels, and competitive implications of sustainability agreement. How is the Autoridade de Concorrência adapting its enforcing toolkit to respond to these new forms of coordination? And what principles guide your agency in balancing legal certainty and proportionality, especially in cases involving green cooperation?
Thank you, Diogo. This is an interesting question. As an enforcer, when you perceive an enforcement gap, you should try to find a way to close it. At the ADC, we divide the approach to prompt awareness, leniency, and complaints. Indeed, our enforcement action develops hand in hand with the issuance of guidance and advocacy initiatives. I do believe that this integrated approach through the use of our toolbox help us to focus our battles on what actually matters for citizens, aligning competition goals with societal challenges while better understanding real people's concerns and frustrations. So I will start with labor markets, where we see a buyer cartel at the end. Competition law clearly establishes that fixing prices at which firms buy or sell may amount to an anti-competitive practices. It also states that sharing input resources can infringe competition law. And so, considering labor markets as any other input market means that we should close to enforcement gap and look at those markets. Other than several sanctioning decisions that we have taken at the authority and ongoing investigations in order to sanction labor markets and no-poach agreements and wage fixings, we have also issued a report and a best practice guides on anti-competitive agreements in the labor market, pursuing our advocacy strategy also. We have been quite vocal regarding these harmful practices, and for so we have been conducting advocacy sessions across the country to raise awareness about these types of infringements and the risk they represent, reaching out to different stakeholders, including workers' unions. I do think it's important for the authorities to leave the headquarters and talk to people, talk to citizens. And for so, we've been particularly ambitious in our current advocacy efforts. In terms of the areas covered, so we've been talking about labor market, also about sustainability and fighting the classical bid reading cases. In terms of geographic coverage, so we've been doing that throughout the country and the spectrum of stakeholders involved. And we have also launched in this year, in 2025, a cycle of outreach and cross-border dialogue in key economic sectors, from health to education and housing, that we call Competition Plus Initiative. These allow us to bring topics that are new to our advocacy efforts, such as labor markets and sustainability, and at the same time to continue our ongoing efforts to reach out to public contracting agencies, while at the same time within the recipients of our message, including labor-related public entities, workers' representatives, environmentally related public entities, and entities committed to sustainability objectives, among others. This is why we believe that this initiative called Competition Plus captures well far-reaching nature we envision to our advocacy stance. These advocacy initiatives that I have just mentioned are crucial in powering our traditional detection tools. But the fact is that technology is a double-edged sword. It can improve efficiency in the markets and ensure effective competition enforcement, but it can also enable anti-competitive behavior in new shapes and forms. This is when the digital markets come out. Pricing algorithms are a prime example. Firms can resort to pricing algorithms in a collusive agreement to assisting in overcoming the hurdles of monitoring and matching, namely through the repricer tool, which is often a feature of pricing tools offered to vendors online. Furthermore, research has opened our eyes to the possibility of algorithm collusion achieved through the interaction between self-learning algorithms. And while earlier on such concerns seemed far-fetched, more recent research has shown that they are increasingly acute. Actually, AI-powered pricing algorithms may been shown to be able to speed up algorithm collusion and increase the likelihood with which they autonomously learn to set prices in a way that mimics collusive outcomes. And so, in 2019, the Portuguese authority issued a paper on digital ecosystems, big data and algorithms, where we highlight the risk of some pricing algorithms could reach collusive equilibrium on their own. We also sought to widen our knowledge regarding the use of algorithms. For so, we try to understand first the prevalence of algorithms, and second, who is supplying algorithms to whom. And so we carried out surveys on the use of algorithms in Portugal, both economy-wide and in particular sectors. We also sought to reach out to price algorithms developers worldwide through requests of information that were sent to over 200 of such firms in order to learn which sectors and firms in Portugal they were supplying to. And this is certainly an area where we need to keep gathering information and we keep working on at the Portuguese authority. Now let me move to sustainability agreements. Because at the same time, sustainability agreements put competition authorities to the test. We must tell the difference between genuine public interest collaborations and anti-competitive behavior in disguise. This is another field in which advocacy plays a vital role, approaching the so-called competition greenwashing by providing clear and consistent guidance on what kind of collaboration is permitted under competition law, which might create legal certainty and avoids collusive behavior. That's the role that we've been doing through the advocacy that we've been promoting. And we've been doing that through the issuance of a best practice guide on sustainability agreements that followed the, I would say, famous European Commission's guidelines on sustainability agreements. On the one hand, these Portuguese guidelines suggest a positive approach to sustainability agreements and streamline the assessment of common sustainability agreements with minimal adverse impacts. These Portuguese guidelines follow the EU guidelines on sustainability and include three major elements related to the positive assessment of the agreements. The first one, the concept of sustainability, which includes not only environmental initiatives, but also social objectives, including labor and human rights. The second, the benefits for consumers, which are decisive for the competitive analysis of the agreements, and that do not include benefits for society in general, but only for consumers in the relevant markets. And thirdly, following the EU guidelines that provide a soft safe harbor for sustainability standards subject to 6 cumulative conditions. And so, by doing so, both following the EU guidelines and the paper that we produced in Portugal, we aim to encourage companies to establish sustainability agreements that advance society's welfare by improving the assessment process for these agreements. The implementation of these guidelines requires not only a close cooperation among competition authorities and the European Commission regarding these agreements, but also that competition authorities continue to advocate for their use and raise awareness for these goals. This is what the Portuguese authority did, participating at the ICN25 workshop on sustainability organized by the Autorité de la Concurrence, or when issuing its best practices guide. We do think that by mentioning the rules in an instructive manner and giving illustrative examples, the Portuguese guide helps to provide a helpful list of the assessment that companies should carry out to check if their agreements comply with competition law. So to conclude, these are the new challenges that we seek to synergize through our active efforts, both in terms of advocacy and enforcement. Indeed, applying competition law and intervening in behaviors that distort competition creates, as a byproduct, good things for society, including increased workers' welfare and more sustainable outcomes, among other things. So this is what we have been doing at the ADC. Thank you, Diogo.
Thank you, Nuno. Last but not least, I will stay with one topic that it's always recurring in the speeches. So let's talk about algorithmic collusion. Jorge, in your introduction, you referred to the creation of the intelligence unit in 2020 as a milestone of Chile's cartel enforcements. And during the 21st competition day in 2024, which was focused on algorithmic pricing and collusion, you stated that the Fiscalia is prepared to detect and prosecute algorithmic collusion, and that Chile's institutional framework is sufficiently mature to face this challenge. Could you elaborate on these points and explaining how Chilean competition law applies to the algorithmic collusion and describing the specific role of the intelligence unit in these efforts?
Thank you, Diogo. Well, during our 21st competition day on last December, with the presence of the economist Joe Harrington as keynote speaker, we expressed to the competition community that we are convinced that Chile's institutional framework is sufficiently mature to address the challenge posed by algorithmic collusion. We started with a word of caution. The FNE does not have a bias against algorithms or their use in business, as they can generate efficiencies and other positive externalities. However, as we all know, algorithms can also generate anti-competitive risks that could facilitate or even conceal a collusion. Technology cannot be at the service of anti-competitive infringements. Competition agencies must use technology to fight hard against the misuse of technology by companies and its executives. Certainly, compliance programs should play a significant complementary role in deterring such misuse. With respect to the law, it is important to highlight that the Chilean Competition Act contains provisions with an open and versatile framework capable of encompassing a variety of anti-competitive infringements, including, in this case, not only agreements, but also concerted practices. The concept of concerted practices should be particularly suitable for addressing some cases of algorithmic collusion. When investigating algorithmic collusion, our current investigation powers pose a few challenges. We believe that the FNE is prepared to address them. Let me give you a few examples. First, RFIs may require cooperation of undertakings to avoid litigation during the investigation. This is especially relevant in algorithmic collusion investigations, where the information that is needed requires, in general, access to proprietary codes and sophisticated technical explanations. Of course, in the law, we have tools to require access to proprietary codes or to obtain such explanations, but of course the ideal scenario is not to be in the need of using them. Second, in case of done rates, the obtention of access to cloud servers, large databases, and algorithms is also a relevant challenge that competition agencies must face in these types of cases. Furthermore, it is essential to recognize that the use of algorithms presents a direct challenge to the traditional analysis of information. Specifically, the issue lies in the fact that the conditions observable on a given day regarding the coherence and operation of the algorithmic code may differ substantially within a matter of days or even hours. Consequently, regardless of the method used to obtain the information, it is relevant that such data be accompanied by and subject to verification against a detailed and timely explanatory statement from the company under investigation. Algorithmic collusion is not the only concern of the intelligence unit nowadays. I would like to tell you about a particular tool that the unit has been working on, which also highlights the need to strengthen interinstitutional relationships for an effective fight against cartels. Through an institutional collaboration agreement with the agency responsible for the centralization of public procurement in Chile, Chile Compra, the intelligence unit has developed a tool capable of analyzing public tenders and is working on implementing certain markers to detect indicative behaviors of collusion, which will then be verified using the investigative powers of the FNE's anti-cartel division. Thank you.
Thank you, Jorge. It's always good to hear that we're still innovating in the cartel enforcement, even though we rely also in traditional methods. And I think this is the message of this session, how it's essential to cartel enforcement to combine traditional methods of investigation with the new ones in order to keep going and to catching up with the new methods of infringement. So let's make, we are about 8 minutes to go, so let's make a final wrap up. So I will give the floor for you to make final remarks or to jump in what with each other speeches and so on. So I will start with Derek. Let's keep the line. I will start with Derek, then Lucilia, Nuno, and Jorge.
Certainly a number of common themes coming through here in terms of the use of sustainability guidance. I think it's something that we're seeing across a lot of jurisdictions. A lot of thought about algorithmic collusion in New Zealand. It's an interesting issue at the moment, given the state of our legislation. I think the view is that although our legislation is pretty general, that there's opportunity there to take an action in relation to that if we needed to, and particularly in terms of action against individuals, because we've got powers to take action against any individual who aids, abets, is engaged or knowingly concerned in any contravention. So once you can show a contravention in terms of an agreement by algorithmic collusion, then you can take action against all the individuals directly or indirectly involved. So that's useful. So I think these are all interesting issues that we're all grappling with across the globe.
So I would just like to make a quick plug to the final draft of the dawn raids manual that is has been done by the Cartels Working Group. So I say final draft because I think it's formally going to be hopefully approved by the ICN members at this annual conference. So this work was it was a project team led by the CMA and a number of other agencies from across the world, so Brazil, Canada, Spain, Mexico, and Korea. And we worked together to update the dawn raids manual from the ICN, which dated 2009. And if you think back in 2009, I'm pretty sure that the way of getting through the door of a company is the same as today, but everything else has changed, right? So in particular, the way that, these days you find evidence generally in digital format, the fact that people work from home, carry phones, mobile phones with lots of evidence in it, and so on. I think the project team did a really awesome work of bringing the manual to present day. They also made a real effort to make sure that the manual is relevant to agencies across the world. So that goes all the way from very experienced, mature, well-resourced agencies, all the way to agencies who are newer to cartel enforcement, have less experience or fewer resources. So have a look next time you're planning a raid, because I think it's really a great work product.
Yeah, I'd just like to highlight the importance of international cooperation when it comes to fighting cartels. Cartels are no longer national, they are cross-border cartels, international cartels, and for that we need to share our experience, our knowledge, to exchange information between authorities, to create an atmosphere of trust. And that's why we are here at the ICN. The ICN is fundamental to create this atmosphere of trust that allow us, when we get back home, to share information and to pursue our investigations that are no longer in national investigations, but international investigations between our teams. And for that, I do think that we need to foster international cooperation, not only through ICN, we'll be doing that within the EU, with the ECN, which is a very important network within the European Union that was created by the famous Reg 1, and it keep working, and that allow us within the European Union to share information between authorities. So we have to promote that also internationally by the ICN, the OECD, and we'll be doing that in Portugal. Portugal is a very open country, and also when it comes to competition, to the application of competition law, we've been sharing information and learning with other authorities and trying to, through that, fight the cartels and investigate cartels. So it's very important to have these forums and to create, once again, this atmosphere of trust, of knowledge between us. Thank you, Diogo.
Thank you. Jorge, please.
Yes, I would like to back Nuno's thoughts on international cooperation. As we have mentioned in other opportunities, international cooperation has been key for the FNE strategy in fighting cartels. This collaboration has been essential not only for training and sharing experience, but also for supporting our investigations. The fight against algorithmic collusion is no exception. We have been engaged in constructive dialogue with sister agencies to address the significant challenges posed by this type of conduct. The FNE is fully committed to collaborating with our ICN peers when needed.
Thank you very much. I think we are about time. I will just keep with the message of international cooperation and the importance of ICN. I think it was very important and is still important to Brazil and for all countries that are presented here. I hope that this panel presented you a whole menu of how we do enforcement in cartels and how the combination of the tools, of modern tools and traditional tools can improve our activity. And now I would ask you to join me in a round of applause for our wonderful panelists. Thank you.